All right, so we're taking a look at Micro 4 and just diagnosing a few problems with a couple of the illustrations. Now, if we look at this egg white and egg yolk, it looks pretty good from a distance, or from a normal view. But if we really look, if we start looking close up at it, we can see that it's an egg yolk, which should be kind of smooth and rounded, or an egg white that should be kind of smooth and rounded. And here I'm seeing some like corners or angles that don't look very organic. So let's kind of take a look and see what's going on here. If we zoom in and I select the direct selection tool and I click on some of these paths. First of all, this path, when I look at this, I see that there are curves to it, but what I'm seeing is that there's straight lines and then a curve and then another straight line and then a curve, which doesn't really look natural. Organic shape like egg white is going to be sort of flowing and curved. There would be no straight lines on it. And another thing that I'm noticing too is where these curves are, there are two anchor points. And if I drag these handles, I notice that they're corner points. So there should be no like sharp corner here. It should be completely smooth. And that's the case with this one as well. So this really wasn't set up correctly, this particular path. And let's take a look at this outer one, because this one looks like just a straight lines with angles, corners to them. And if we really look at these anchor points and zoom in and we select these, we notice that there are no handles at all. If I click and drag this point out, you don't see any handles. So a curved path is going to have handles at the anchor points where the path changes direction. So if we, I'm going to zoom out for a minute here. And I just want to show you or remind you again of how you would go about just making a simple curved path, a simple curved closed shape. So selecting the pen tool, I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm pulling out those handles when I drag from the anchor point. And you can see that when I let go of the mouse button and I move the mouse, that the path is curved from that anchor point. So that's what we want. Now I'm going to click and drag again. So when I click and drag, it means that I'm clicking and I'm holding the mouse button down as I drag, and that's what's creating these handles. And I'm getting this curved path. I'm not getting corners or straight lines, and that's for something like food, like an egg white that's irregular. We want curved paths, no angles, because that just isn't something that happens in nature, at least not for something like an egg white. Okay, and then I'm going to come around and click over the original anchor point. You see that hollow circle shows us that we're going to create a closed path. I'm going to click and drag, so I'm still holding the mouse button to drag those handles out, and I have an organic shape, all curved paths. There's no straight lines or sharp corners. Okay, so that's ideally how we want to create our organic shape, our irregular curving egg white. But in order to fix something that's already been done, we can also do that. If I click on this path that has the corner points, and I'm in my direct selection tool. So to get to that, I hit I hit A, the letter A on the keyboard. If I want to drag handles out from this, I'm going to hit Shift C on the keyboard, and I get this um, little kind of an arrow shape. And if I click and drag on that anchor point, I can drag out these handles. And you see when I drag out to the right, I get kind of a twisted path. I can just rotate around to the left, and it'll smooth itself out. So the farther that we drag these handles out, the more gradual the curve is going to be. All right. So if I keep doing that on these anchor points and dragging out these handles, then I can transform this this path with straight lines and sharp corners into a more organic shape, a curving path with smooth transitions at the anchor points. Okay, so here's a really good example of this straight lines and sharp corners. So I access this tool by clicking Shift C on the keyboard. All right, click and drag, and now I have smoothly curving path. And if I wanted to fix this, I would do that. I would go all the way around my entire shape. And there are quite a few anchor points on here. In fact, I would say there are too many. There do not need, if you have smoothly curving paths, you do not need this many anchor points in order to make your path go in in order to make your path follow this sort of direction. We can eliminate some of these anchor points. We just don't need so many. So if I hit the minus sign on the keyboard, I can click on these the anchor points that I want to delete, and just delete some of these extra ones. Maybe I'm going to delete this one, I think. Now this one does have handles. Okay, so now I just have these two anchor points that I want to deal with, and Shift C again, and then go ahead and click and drag to drag out these handles and make a smoothly curving path. And if you drag in a direction and you get this thing where it kind of like twists or loops, just rotate. I'm holding the mouse button down. I'm dragging with the mouse button down, and iron out that path and straighten it out. All right. So that's how you would fix that sort of situation. Now let's go back to that original, that first path that we were clicking on. And here we go. So this one has a problem where, in order to create the place, you want to set an anchor point at the point where you want the path to change direction. So we really only need one anchor point here. We don't need both of these. It only takes one anchor point to get the path to change direction. This one is set up incorrectly. What's going on here is that there are handles. It's really sort of a corner point, and there are handles on this side, on one side of each of these anchor points, to create this little curve. But then the rest of the path is straight. So what we want to do is just have one anchor point here. So I'm going to hit the minus sign, just delete one of these. It probably doesn't matter which one we delete. Just choose that one. And then I'll hit Shift C and click and drag out from that anchor point, so I get these two handles that I can rotate. And you can see that I control the direction of the path by rotating these handles. And again, the farther I drag them out, the smoother or maybe in this case, the shallower that curve is going to be. So anyway, here we go. Okay, so I could go around this entire path, and what I would do is I would delete. Again, I hit the minus sign, delete one of these anchor points, and then go to Shift C click and drag on the remaining anchor point, drag out those handles, and create that smooth curve. And that will also make these the formerly straight path segments between the anchor points, those will also be curving. Oops. Now here's what I did. Now if I was to remain in this like tool, anchor point tool, and I had to remind myself exactly what this is called. If I click on one of these handles, still in the anchor point tool, and drag the handle, I'm going to create sort of like a half curved and half corner point. And that's not something, I mean, for an organic shape like an egg white, it's not something that we want. There are situations where you might want to use something like this, but we don't want that kind of a thing. So I'm going to hit Command Z. All right, so when you're finished dragging out these handles and rotating them and getting the path in the direction that you want it to go, then you could go and hit A on the keyboard, go back to the direct selection tool, and at this point you can then, if you want to make further adjustments, you can drag these handles out without creating that sort of weird, you know, half kind of corner point. And if you need to move an anchor point, because maybe you want to just adjust the shape, then click on the anchor point, click again, and then drag. All right, so this is a way that you can edit your shapes, and if you have any problems like what I was just showing, so for example, this entire path has this kind of setup which is not correct, where there's two anchor points every time the path changes direction. And what I could do if I wanted to fix this without redrawing it is to go ahead and delete one of the anchor points and then drag those handles out from the remaining anchor point, and that's how we could fix this.